Hello everybody, welcome to TUC Congress 2024 here on the CWU store, where we're going to be meeting hundreds and hundreds of delegates from across all the unions in the UK and even some international guests as well. More importantly than what we're going to be doing though is in there in the hall where the democracy of our movement takes place. Our union's got two motions, one on Royal Mail, one on New Deal for Workers coming. We're going to be bringing you all the news, all the views and the highlights this week. I understand there's someone in the CWU who's trying to steal my job as the host. The brilliant Alarakhia has been going around, he's been interviewing people, he's been speaking at the rostrum, he's been talking to delegates, talking to exhibitors. Let's hear from him now.
Good afternoon, this is Alarakhia from Communication Workers Union. I'm here in Brighton for the Trade Union Congress as a delegate. We will be discussing and debating motions here, and I want to tell you how important Trade Union Congress is. So let's have a look inside and see what's going on.
As you know, we were set up by the TUC in 1899, and this is our 125th anniversary year. Wow. So it's important for us to have a presence, and for us, because we don't have members, we have affiliated unions like CWU. It's important that those unions can see that we're here, we're part of the fabric of the left. This is the programme for the coming year, and there's loads of really interesting courses in there. If people wanted to see it, it's available online as well. And the other thing is we've relaunched Federation News, which is this newsletter.
Brilliant.
We did it up until about 10 years ago and then stopped because there just wasn't the demand. But because people now, with the new Labour government, with more and more people getting involved in making a difference, some resurgence of trade unionism, we're finding that it's gone down really well. So this is its first reissue.
Brilliant.
So yeah,
I'll have a copy of that as well. Thank you very much for that.
Amnesty is the world's largest human rights organisation, and trade unions have always been one of the key parts of what we do. And one of the first ever cases that Amnesty worked on was that of a trade unionist who represented workers on ships in the shipping industry and who was imprisoned by Franco's regime simply for raising a toast to workers' rights. Trade unions are also some of the world's biggest human rights organisations. They stand up for ordinary working people. So it's always been really important to us to have a relationship, to work together for workers' rights. And we also know that trade unions are organisations that protect all sorts of human rights. They rely on freedom of assembly, freedom of expression, they underpin our economic rights as well. So yeah, we have a thriving trade union network. Almost all of the TUC affiliated unions are affiliated to Amnesty International, which is great. They give us financial support for what we do, campaigning support, especially around countries where unfortunately trade unionists are still sometimes locked up for the work they do.
I support activists that work on country-specific campaigns. One of the reasons we come to TUC is trade unions are great international solidarity too. We just think keeping that relationship going strong is one of the most important things for international solidarity, but also solidarity between organisations in the UK with similar goals.
As you can see, there's quite a lot going on at the moment here. We've got so many stalls here. We've got hundreds of people at the Congress. Not been able to speak to everyone, but we managed to speak to a couple of people. And I've got this new delegate called Josh, who's actually joined us for a quick interview.
First time delegate here at the TUC conference, which has been so far a really great experience for me. From somebody who's sort of been in the union for sort of 8 years or so now, and then sort of 2 years heavily involved with my branch and the national side of things. This is a real eye-opener, and the networking opportunities that I've been able to have since being here have just been sort of incredible. just even being in the same sort of hotel and you're seeing all these politicians and big trade union leaders that you only normally see on TV. So it's like, wow, okay. It feels very real when you're here. And yeah, it's an experience.
Okay, brilliant. Sure. Any specific highlights about the conference? I know you did speak on one of the motions as well earlier on, but anything specific highlights which, you want to share with us, please?
Yeah, I think I've got a couple. I think one of the main ones was the talk of the New Deal for Workers and having our own General Secretary Dave Ward and Mick Lynch and Sharon Graham of Unite as well. Having these big, powerful trade union leaders sort of had the audience sort of captivated in the room, and you could feel the energy from the TUC audience here of our need and our sort of our call to action for that New Deal and putting that pressure on the Labour government to make sure that this act does come in the first, is one of their first set policies that will really help workers. So I think that was one of my sort of big favourites of the day. I do have another one, obviously speaking as well, was a sort of a real honour and an opportunity to be able to speak to the TUC on behalf of our membership and the wider trade union membership in regards to climate change and workers' health. Was a real positive for me that'll live long in the memory.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Just a final point on, so if there is anyone who wants to come along and they're a bit hesitant and they're feeling a bit embarrassed or shy to come along to Trade Union Congress or any other conferences which we hold, what would be your advice for them who are a bit hesitant to come along?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I think everybody does, even myself. I'm generally a very confident person, and even today I was nervous speaking in front of so many people, but I would say, look, if you don't try, you'll never know, and I think it's good to get stuck in. Everyone can make a silly look at themselves sometimes, but no one's laughing at you. At the end of the day, you've given it a go, you've come to try, and it's an experience that you'll only learn from, and everyone here is learning, no matter how long they've been here or whatever they've done. Everybody's here for the same common goal, and I think that's what should be remembered.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Josh. Really appreciate your time.
Cheers, Adam. Thank you very much, as ever.
So for the audience, this is been a quick chat with Josh. We've had a chat with Josh with regards to his own experience. So as you can see, Josh is a first-time delegate, but it's very clear now that it's not that difficult, honestly. If myself and Josh, I'm sure you wouldn't mind me saying this, if we both can do it, then anyone can do it. So please come along and experience the Trade Union Congress in the future. I've had a lovely experience at the Trade Union Congress 2024. I have had a great opportunity to speak to people at the stalls. In the actual Congress itself, we've debated quite a lot of motions ranging from terms and conditions, pay rises, universal credit, and various other topics we've discussed. Please tune in for next time and stick with your union.
So after watching that, I think my job definitely is under threat. Well done, Adam. So moving from that one feature to another, this time where we really been keen to get out in the workplace. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by our Deputy General Secretary, Postal, Martin Walsh. Great to have you with us, Martin.
Great to be here, Chris. Hello, everyone.
So Martin has been on the conference floor, moved a crucial motion on Royal Mail takeover yesterday. We're going to speak to you a little bit on that, Martin, in a moment. But first of all, we've been out and about. We've been into Pensbury Place. We filmed a great feature, and we want Martin to respond to that. So let's watch that first. Let's hit play.
Hi everyone, today I'm here at Royal Mail Pensbury Place. I've come to speak to CWU members regarding what their concerns are, what their thoughts are on the takeover bid.
The Czech billionaire who's hoping to take over Royal Mail has warned that not all demands by unions can be met. Daniel Kretinsky has made a £3.6 billion bid for the firm.
We hear bits about this character taking over, but it's quite a lot of people. You can hear in people's voices when they talk about it. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of worry, a lot of unknown. That's the issue, it's the unknown.
I joined on from the apprentice scheme. I'm not sure what his views on that will be, whether that will be something that continues. But it was really helpful for me. It was a nice introduction to the company. And that would be my number one concern. Will that stay on? Will there be other opportunities for people to join on with the company so that it still remains as it is?
we've had a lot of management changes, and you know, it's a lot of concern, like how the management treat us. Is it going to change? Are we going to change the USO? You know, we're still here to serve the public.
In terms of what I was saying, Greg, around the USO, there are concerns obviously around potentially going to 3 days a week. You know, sort of the service being diluted, and it you know, offers a lot of uncertainty in where we're going to be, and you know, could it lead to, it makes me ask the question, could it lead to part-time jobs? Could it lead to more job cuts? But then on the other hand, I'm asking myself, could it lead to innovative duty patterns? Could we get more time away from the job? But the questions there are just, we don't know what way it could go.
Kaczynski visa looking to take over the company. What are your concerns?
That we're not going to be listened to, and we're all going to be out of a job. They're not going to listen to us, and from the top, they don't know how it's meant to work, really, to be honest. They don't know the struggles that the posties go through. So
a bit sceptical. That's what it is. Do you know what I mean? And then maybe outshifting it as well is another concern, that you can't do a worse job than what they've done personally over the last 10 years.
Biggest concerns are that you've got somebody who's not known for wanting to be a part of a postal industry, jumping into what is basically one of the biggest industries in this country, and it's ripe for asset stripping. It's possible that he really wants to make a go of this, but to be honest with you, we've seen this so many times before. Once they're in, we've got a massive pension, we've got assets that on paper make us worth an awful lot of money, and some guy from somewhere making all these promises, and he's going to buy us outright, and we're going to hand one of the biggest assets this country's ever had in its history to a guy who's an unknown quantity. And there's no guarantees that he's not just going to cut us up, strip us away, and make us like one of his other competitors.
The Postal Service can trace its roots as far back as 1516, when Henry VIII knighted the first master of the post. The British government privatised it about a decade ago.
If a takeover were to take place, my concern would be that there'd be mass job cuts. I believe that at the moment, since privatisation, quality of service has been put last. I'd be worried about the USO, and quite a number of. I'd just be in general worried about my future.
Excellent views coming from CWU members there. Their thoughts on it was all about asset stripping, pensions, job security, even down to workplace practices, the current duty structures that they're on. Everything ranging from what they do day to day to the biggest issues around their pensions. We need the union to get some guarantees, we need the government to ensure that people are protected, and we need people just to make sure that, you know, their concerns are addressed in the future.
One thing that, you know, I thought that was an excellent feature. I think our team, don't want to give them credit, have done a good job there, Greg. But most of all, like, we never failed to be amazed by like the level of understanding, intelligence, strategy shown by our members. Your initial reaction to that feature?
Some excellent questions, excellent debate. Just to say, that's my office, Victoria. So you know, I know some of those people very well. So some of the questions, challenges, are really welcomed.
I mean, you must be sitting here thinking, I mean, the members there are almost like directly representing the chat you're having on the executive. They're worried about the takeover, they're worried about the future of the USO, they're worried about the future of their jobs. What would you say to, you know, the various groups of members there who raised a number of issues?
Those are the challenges we face, and what we're taking up with EP, Daniel Kaczynski and Roman are just that, the USO, whether there is enough money, whether there's going to be growth, whether our members are going to have a future. And we obviously want to reach an agreement with Daniel. It's still to be seen whether they're going to have ownership of Royal Mail, but we have to prepare for, if they are, to make sure we got an agreement that protects our members and gives a great future for going forward.
So let's just break those issues down then. The USO. So, you know, part of the social fabric of the country, you know, 33, we made the point yesterday on your speech, 33 million homes and businesses in the UK delivered to 6 days a week. You know, it's under threat, Martin. It's not even being sustained at the minute. Ofcom are turning a blind eye to their own targets which they've set up and not even being met. How can we, you know, leave this debate to Ofcom and Royal Mail? Surely that leads only one way, which is to downgrade into the postal service?
Yeah, look, I think everyone knows there's got to be USO reform. Every other country in the world is going through the same thing as we are. What we got to make sure is whatever the changes are, it limits the amount of job losses, it gives people a better work-life balance, and we're delivering quality-wise. And of course, the model we're looking at does increase the amount of full-time jobs. I know, I think John on the video was saying a fear of part-time jobs. The actual modelling shows more full-time jobs within this.
It feels to me as if the trade union, and therefore, you know, 100,000 plus of our members are in a horrendous position. We have, you know, a Labour government, which, you know, we're hearing here at TUC Congress is going to be a lot better for working class people than any other government in the last 40 years, certainly. But it's not going to renationalise Royal Mail. That's one. So that's a no to our members. You then look at the current board, who have been an absolute disgrace and run the company to the ground. And then you look at the prospective takeover bidders of, like, you know, this is the Royal Mail falling into the hands of a foreign equity firm. I mean, you could forgive our members for not being that optimistic at this point, couldn't you?
Yeah, look, I made the point yesterday in the speech, and members are faced with a rock and hard place situation. On one hand, you got a board which we can't trust. It's run this company into the ground on the brink of administration, attacked the workforce, attacked the union. We can't trust them, but on the other hand, this will be the only postal system in the world being handed over to an overseas investor. So both of those situations are very serious, but as a responsible trade union, we've got to make sure our members' voices are heard, and that's why we're looking at legal guarantees, no outsourcing, no franchising, no breaking up the company, no compulsory redundancies, and what benefits are going to be there for our members. And we've got to do that as a responsible trade union.
On the feature then, so, you know, as I said, credit to our team for putting that together, and the members, thank you to all of you, by the way, who came on. You were fantastic. You've been a highly visible leader of the union since your election. You've been out and about almost non-stop, let's be honest, about meeting reps, meeting members. Would you like to see more of this type of thing from the union, us getting them out and about, putting the members' questions directly to you? Maybe you'll join us on one of the trips.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to Wakefield on Wednesday, and I'm going to Leeds Mill Centre on Tuesday night. And also to the RDC. I think, you know, my message has always been we've got to reconnect, we've got to get into workplaces, and we're going to continue to do that. Obviously, there's 1,200 of sites, so we're not going to be getting every unit overnight, but part of this must be we rebuild from the bottom up, and I'm keen to engage with everyone. You've seen us on Facebook, etc. We're going to engage with the members. We've got to reconnect, we've got to rebuild. Only through collective strength will we have an industry which survives.
Final question. You made your debut, if you like. So we were chatting about it yesterday. Obviously, decades and decades as a CWU activist. Obviously now the Deputy General Secretary. Coming here as a different audience, the whole trade union movement. As a friend and colleague, I suppose it would be my job to say I thought your speech was excellent, but it was excellent. It was well received by you know, our delegation and the whole. Must have been a good moment.
Yeah. proud moment. It was a crucial debate around the future of Royal Mail, around who owns it, where the government sits in, where Ofcom sits in, and we've got to make sure we hold everyone to account, but most importantly, our members' voices, postal workers' voices must be heard, and the public. And that's what we'll continue doing.
Right, thank you, Martin. Now from Martin to Martin, let's hear a bit of that speech.
Congress, Royal Mail is facing unprecedented challenges. We have a board which is out of its depth and it's out of control. We're faced with a takeover bid from a foreign private equity firm which would make Royal Mail the only postal administrator in the world owned by an overseas investor. We're also faced with a regulator in Ofcom which is working hand in hand with the employer, which is turning a blind eye to quality of service across the UK. Congress, all of you know and trust your local postie. You know from your own experiences in your communities that the service which Royal Mail provides has been undermined. Royal Mail is part of the social fabric of the UK, delivering to 33 million addresses 6 days a week under the universal service obligation. And let's have it right, Congress. Royal Mail belongs in public hands. It should never be privatised, and CW will never stop calling effort to be renationalised. Alongside that, we can't turn away from the debate which who owns the future direction of the company. We have EP Group, we have basically the current board, and we have Ofcom. We have got to have the voice of postal workers and the voice of public in the debate. We've engaged with the company, bidding to own Royal Mail, foreign equity company EP, owned by Daniel Kaczynski. He also part owns my football team, West Ham. We can't even deliver a corner. How is he going to deliver the mail? So what are we seeking in this motion? We're seeking legal assurances. There'd be no franchising, no outsourcing of work, no break-up of the company, no two-tier working force, and definitely about no compulsory redundancies. We're also looking for a new governance model which makes unions and workers have more of a say in the strategy going forward. And we demand the commitment to grow the company. We want to see real ambition. We're sick and tired of CEOs just running down the company and running down the service. We don't want the takeover, but we've got no faith in the current board, who launched during our dispute one of the most bitter union-busting strategies on the workforce. They targeted the reps and members, they ripped up our national agreements, they destroyed morale, and they destroyed the service. Congress, during our last dispute, Royal Mail sacked around 200 reps on trumped-up charges. I ask you to show your appreciation to the solidarity of CW members and reps across the UK that saw hundreds of those workers returning in biggest collective reversal of conduct code decisions in UK trade union history. The attack on Royal Mail is the same as the attack on the NHS, railways, utilities. Backed by the Tories, they've run the country into the ground. We're here to say to the Labour government, to Ofcom, to Royal Mail and the EP Group, the whole trade union movement is behind CW members and ready to fight to save our postal service.
So many of our delegates have been doing a great job. They've been really busy. Nobody more so, though, than our General Secretary, Dave Ward. Let's hear from him.
I mean, I'd start on a sad note, really, in the sense of, like, first conference since Andy Kerr passed away. And I think, you know, we all missed him at this Congress. The amount of people in other trade unions that came up to me during the course the Congress to pass on their condolences. So that was something that was really noticeable, because people like me and Andy, Tony Kearns, Martin, now Karen, senior people, sometimes you have to have a bit more of a chat about things. And obviously me and Andy would always do that about some of the key policies and that. So, yeah, I mean, that was felt during the Congress and felt by a lot of other trade unionists here, which was a nice touch. I think the Congress, really important thing for us was not to just debate things, that we kind of know where we are, but to push the boundaries again. And we've certainly done that on New Deal for Working People, which, has been our campaign that's ended up with the trade union support, with government support, and is now pending legislation. But the focus for us was about making sure, what do we do beyond that legislation? And we were really pleased with the proposition that got unanimous support across Congress, and now we've got to do the work to introduce sectorial collective bargaining. We'll explain a little bit more to our delegates about what that means, to our members and branches about what that means. But basically it means that we can drive up pay terms and conditions across the UK, which supports our members and other workers. And as I often say, ends the approach to the race to the bottom that companies exploit and turns it into a race to the top. And so that's an important structural change that we'll be seeking to try and do with trade unions. The point I made at the Congress was it's not just about what Labour do, it's about what we do as trade unions independently of Labour. And that went down well, and we were really pleased, particularly pleased that Mick Lynch seconded the motion, done a great speech on that. We were able to focus a lot of people's attention on Royal Mail, because of, obviously it's been in the news, there's some big moments for our members in Royal Mail, and we've got to kind of get to a crunch point fairly soon. And it was a good tee up, the motion that we put here, to what we're going to do at the Labour Party conference, where we will be putting pressure on the Labour Party to step up, fulfil the terms that they put forward in their manifesto. And we'll be putting a further motion there on that, because it's a critical time to do that. In the process of that, we obviously also reflected on Keir Starmer's speech. So the first time a Labour Prime Minister has come to the TUC for 15 years. First time there's been a Labour Prime Minister. And reflecting on his speech, I did a couple of interviews immediately afterwards, and that's not always an easy thing. But what I would say is, one, I do think Keir Starmer is serious about change. I think his personal commitment to it runs deep. But where the problem starts, I think, is that if you don't set out a clear plan to how you're going to get there, as yet we haven't heard that. We've heard the bit about, how difficult things are. But I would say probably, with things like the winter fuel allowance being stopped, which is wrong. We've made that clear that it's wrong. We'll be supporting propositions at the Labour Party conference and probably being involved in them in trying to overturn that. That you've got to make, Keir talks about the difficult choices, but I actually think sometimes you're avoiding the most difficult choice if you don't recognise by now that when it comes to filling financial black holes that have been left by the Tories, when it comes to filling societal black holes that have been left by the Tories, which none of us would dispute, you've got to start putting the burden of that onto the shoulders of the richest people in the country, the big financial institutions, the big employers who make profits at the expense of society. Or there's so many different ways that you could raise that money by more progressive tax. And we'll be looking at that as well to make sure that working people don't pay the price for all these things. So we've got a bit of work to do there, and we'll do that. There was also plenty of other, great contributions from our delegates, who I thought this was one of the best delegations I've been on. I've been to many conferences, quality delegation, quality people, really comradely, all sort of getting on with each other and all wanting to contribute. That's the important thing, all wanting to speak and get up and talk about the issues. And, you know, we managed to cover everything, really. There was a really good debate about AI that would have, you know, where we were able to put forward the fact that we defeated BT's, you know, intention to introduce inward-facing dash cam cameras that would have really, you know, got our members in a bad place. That was a good win for the union, and we were able to talk about that in the context of other unions as well, and AI more generally. So this is how the trade union movement works. It moves on. So yeah, it was a good Congress. It always is, but I think this one gives us a good direction going forward.
It's always great to hear from our General Secretary, Dave Ward. The other thing the team have been doing here, though, is hearing from delegates across the trade union movement on what they felt about Congress. Let's watch some of them.
CWU were really good this morning. I think we had 4 or 5 speakers up in different debates, which was fantastic. It's good to see everyone back together in the room talking about what we need to do as a movement.
It's been good. It's quite enjoyable. It's very well organised. The stalls and everything else around here has been great.
It's my first time ever coming, so not sure what I was expecting, but it's been amazing.
The thing that inspires me the most is just the range of different workplaces and how we're facing many of the same issues and how passionate and willing we are to stand in solidarity with each other.
I have been really interested to learn about a lot of the issues affecting other trade unions that I might know a bit less about, and also to see some of the issues that are affecting all of us.
I'm here speaking Cuba Solidarity Fringe this afternoon, and I'm here because I'm volunteering as Trades Union Liaison Officer for Stand Up to Racism. So I'm talking to General Secretaries about things that we might be able to do together to defeat the far right.
Our main motion that we're bringing to this year's Congress is on the issue of Palestine. It's the key international issue of our time and something that we absolutely have championed for decades, the rights of the Palestinian people.
The key message that we're really ramming home is this country doesn't just need an economic recovery, it desperately needs some social cohesion and access to culture, education, hope, you know, a different route in life. That's been decimated too.
It's been a real problem dealing with the anti-trade union laws and the Trade Union Act 2016.
This week is really crucial on the winter fuel allowance for us, and we would have members having to implement that policy, which we're obviously opposed to. But I also think there's very many other things like the employment rights and things like that. So the new Labour government and Starmer did say the first 100 days, but that clock is now ticking.
I think most people would agree trade unions are incredibly important, but you know, we found, particularly with the Conservatives bringing in legislation making it harder to ballot, you know, over the last 10 years, like actually just organising people, getting to threshold to strike ballots, yeah, is you know, very difficult, and so yeah, we try and make that easier.
Obviously, Dave got up and spoke on New Deal for Workers. Martin, our DGSP, has got up and spoken about, you know, the attacks on Royal Mail and it being possibly taken over, etc.
I was raising a motion on misogyny in the music industry, but we've also had several other motions and speakers about sexual harassment in all workplaces. So, for example, that's been an afternoon of solidarity for sure.
I spoke on Wellbeing Today, which was a motion brought forward by our NHS colleagues, and there's just so many crossover issues between the sectors, and at the crux of it, we are all fighting the same fight.
We saw all of the far-right riots following the atrocious attacks in Southport. That didn't come out of a vacuum, and we need to grapple with that, and Labour need to grapple with that too.
We're talking about the fact that you need to do something about the conditions in which despair grows, you know, the poor state of the health service, the poor state of housing. But we also think, from Stand Up to Racism, we think there was a moment this summer when it felt really scary, when the far right were, and maybe not all of them were far right, but there were people involved in violence on the streets pointing at Muslims and migrants, and there was a huge response from the British population saying, no, we don't want that in our country. That's not the sort of country we want to live in.
The thing that's tricky at the minute, and Labour need to figure out a way to be honest, is some workers have had a great pay rise, you know, or had a pay rise that was more than they would expect. Other workers, and they're UCU workers, they haven't. And there's no messaging from Labour about how they're going to deliver for those members.
So I think everything to do with the future we want our kids to have, has to involve a good programme on climate change, but also the employment rights. They're the things that we need to make sure are in our education sector, in our civil service sector, all the way through to our trains and everything else. We need to have a better future for our kids.
There's a chance for change, isn't there? And there needs to be a lot of change, so let's hope it's coming. But there are some rights for workers. I'd like to see the right to ballot electronically. I'd like to see there being something called sectoral collective bargaining. That would be great if we could have that. I think there needs to be rather more focus on taxation of the richest in our country in order to make sure that everyone else is getting by all right and that public services are running.
What a Labour government delivers very much depends on how well organised we are in the workplace.
Well, what a whirlwind that was, and we want to thank you all for tuning in. I want to thank all of our delegates and everyone that's contributed to a brilliant show. I actually think it's one of the best episodes we've ever produced. We've had loads and loads of content here in TUC Congress. We've had a feature in the workplace. It is clear that this union is out there every single day fighting to protect your jobs and be your voice in your workplace and in your community. So from us, we'll see you next week. Take care, keep fighting and keep the faith.